Every morning for the past 20 years, I've stepped into the same elevator at exactly 6:45 a.m., clutching my leather briefcase and a cup of black coffee. My name is Theodore Ted Calloway, but everyone calls me Ted, or worse, that guy who worked for Garrick. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm proud of what I do. As executive assistant to Garrick Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Industries, I've been the invisible backbone holding this empire together. From managing his schedule to handling confidential documents, I know more about this company than anyone else, including Garrick himself. But today felt different. As the elevator doors slid open on the 32nd floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The office buzzed with its usual energy, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. People avoided eye contact as I passed them, which wasn't unusual. Most employees thought I was some kind of corporate spy sent by Garrick to keep tabs on them. Still, their whispers reached me like static. Heard they're restructuring soon. They say he's too old school now. Too old school? After everything I'd done for this place? I shook my head, dismissing the thoughts. It didn't matter. I had work to do. By mid-morning, I realized why things felt strange. Sera Vale, that ambitious upstart who'd been promoted last quarter, kept popping up where she didn't belong. She'd hover near my desk, pretend to ask questions about protocols, but her eyes would dart toward the locked drawer in my cabinet. That drawer held secrets, not just mine, but the company's. Years ago, I started collecting incriminating files, emails showing illegal mergers, spreadsheets detailing tax fraud, even audio recordings of Garrick threatening partners. I told myself I was protecting the company, but deep down I knew better. Those files were my insurance policy, a lifeline if anyone ever tried to push me out. Sera finally cornered me during lunch. "You've been here forever, Ted," she said with a smile so sweet it made my teeth ache. "But don't you think it's time to let someone younger take over?" Her words hit harder than I expected, not because they were true, but because she sounded so confident, so certain that I was expendable. I forced a laugh. "When you've been doing this as long as I have, kid, you'll understand loyalty isn't measured in years. It's measured in results." She smirked, like she already knew something I didn't. It happened later that afternoon. Garrick summoned me to his office, a rare occurrence since he usually relied on intercoms or emails to bark orders. When I walked in, he didn't look up from his desk, just sat there, signing papers like I was another item on his to-do list. Finally, he spoke without meeting my gaze. "Ted, we need to talk." My stomach dropped. You know that sinking feeling when you realize you've forgotten something important? That's how it felt, except multiplied tenfold. He went on to explain in clipped, impersonal tones that the company needed fresh blood and that my role was being eliminated, effective immediately. No severance package, no farewell party. Just a cold dismissal after 2 decades of service. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could manage was a choked. "Why?" Garrick shrugged, still refusing to meet my eyes. "It's business, Ted. Nothing personal." Nothing personal. The words echoed in my head as I packed to my desk, my hands trembling with rage. 20 years of loyalty, reduced to nothing personal. As I shoved papers into boxes, I found a folder labeled confidential, tucked under a stack of old memos. Inside were detailed reports accusing me of incompetence, negligence, even leaking sensitive information to competitors. The accusations were absurd. I'd never done any of those things, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Sera Vale, that snake had framed me. Anger surged through me, hot and uncontrollable. How dare she? How dare they? They thought they could cast me aside like yesterday's trash, but they had no idea what I was capable of. My fingers brushed against a locked drawer where I kept a USB drive. For years, I'd resisted using it, telling myself I wasn't that kind of person. But now I wasn't so sure. That night, I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, staring at the USB drive like it was a loaded gun. The files on it weren't just evidence. They were weapons. With one click, I could bring down Garrick, Sera, and half the board directors. But once I crossed that line, there'd be no going back. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "If you want justice, call Elias Drake." Who the hell was Elias Drake? Curiosity got the better of me, and I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. Inspector Drake, retired NYPD. Heard you might need some help. I hesitated, unsure whether to trust him, but then I remembered the smug look on Sera's face, the indifference in Garrick's voice. Screw caution. If they thought they could destroy me, they had another thing coming. Elias Drake arrived at my apartment the next day, a wiry man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened intently as I explained everything, occasionally nodding or jotting notes in a worn notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me. You sure you're ready for this, Ted? Once we start, there's no turning back. I'm sure, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Drake smiled faintly. Good, because this ain't going to be pretty. Together, we devise a plan. Leak select pieces of evidence to investigate a journalist, creating enough public pressure to force Garrick's hand. It was risky, but it was our best shot. That evening, I uploaded the first file, a recording of Garrick admitting to insider trading, and sent it to a trusted journalist. As I hit send, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursed through me. This was war, and I was ready to fight dirty. The explosion came faster than I expected. By morning, the recording was everywhere. Headlines screamed accusations of corruption, and social media lit up with outrage. Hawthorne Industries stock plummeted within hours, and panicked employees flooded the office like ants whose hill had been kicked over. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, glued to the news while sipping stale coffee. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a small smile. Garrick was sweating now, wasn't he? But the victory felt hollow. As I scrolled through the comments online, I saw a post from former colleagues defending Garrick, calling me a traitor who'd sold out the company for personal gain. They didn't know the truth, not yet, but their words stung anyway. Was this really what I wanted? To burn bridges and leave scorched earth behind? My phone buzzed again. It was Drake. Phase one worked, he said gruffly. But they're on to us. We need to lay low. Easier said than done. Sera had already texted me twice, demanding to know if I was behind the leaks. Each message ended with thinly veiled threats. You don't want to play games with people like us, Ted. Oh, but I did. I couldn't avoid Sera forever. She cornered me outside the building where I'd gone to retrieve some personal belongings. Her sleek coat flapped in the wind as she blocked my path, her eyes blazing with fury. What the hell do you think you're doing, Ted? She hissed. I should ask you the same question. I shot back, clutching my box tighter. Framing me? Getting me fired? Did you honestly think I'd roll over and disappear? She smirked, though there was a flicker of unease in her expression. You're playing a dangerous game. Garrick doesn't forgive betrayal. Neither do I said coldly. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two predators sizing each other up. Then, unexpectedly, her demeanor shifted. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot, she said, lowering her voice. If you stop this nonsense now, I can make sure you walk away with dignity intact. Dignity? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Too late for that, I muttered, brushing past her. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. That night, I sat alone in my dimly lit living room, staring at the remaining files on the USB drive. Every document represented a life-altering decision, a chance to expose wrongdoing but also to destroy lives, including my own. I thought about my wife, Claire, who'd stood by me through every late night and missed family dinner. What would she say if she knew what I was doing? Would she still look at me the same way? Claire called just then, her voice soft and concerned. Are you okay, Ted? You seem distant lately. I'm fine, I lied, hating how easily the words came, just adjusting to retirement. She paused before responding. You sound different, like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Her words hit too close to home. Hanging up, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and stared into the amber liquid. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was trying to shoulder burdens meant for others. But quitting wasn't an option, not when justice was finally within reach. A few days later, I received another unexpected visitor, Detective Drake. He brought coffee and bad news. "They're coming for you, Ted," he warned. "Garrick's hired private security to track down whoever leaked those files. They'll connect the dots sooner or later." "Great," I muttered, rubbing my temples. "Any suggestions?" Drake hesitated before speaking. "There's someone else you might want to talk to, Seraphina Vale." My jaw dropped. "Sera? Are you serious?" "She reached out to me," Drake explained. "Claims she wants to switch sides. Says Garrick double-crossed her too." I didn't trust her, not for a second, but desperation made strange bedfellows. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe downtown. When she arrived, she looked nervous, fidgeting with her gloves as she slid into the booth across from me. "I know you hate me," she began, avoiding my gaze. "And I don't blame you. But if we team up, we can take Garrick down for good. Together." Her sincerity surprised me and scared me. Could I really work with the woman who'd tried to ruin me? Or was this just another trap? Either way, I realized I didn't have much of a choice. If I wanted to see this through, I needed all the help I could get. Sera and I shook hands at the cafe, but neither of us smiled. It wasn't a partnership. It was a truce, fragile as glass. She promised to provide insider information about Garrett's operations, including his contingency plans if things went south, which they clearly had. In return, I agreed to protect her once the dust settled. But trust? That was out of the question. Back at my apartment, I reviewed the documents Sera had slipped me, a mix of encrypted emails, financial records, and security protocols. They painted a damning picture of Garrick's empire, one far more corrupt than even I'd suspected. Yet something gnawed at me. Why was Sera helping me now? Was she genuinely betrayed by Garrick? Or was this some elaborate ploy to save her own skin? Drake warned me not to let my guard down. "People like her don't change sides out of the goodness of their hearts," he said bluntly. "She's using you, same as before." "Maybe," I admitted, "but right now we're using each other. And that's enough." Garrick wasn't going down without a fight. Within days, rumors spread that private investigators were sniffing around, digging into employees' backgrounds, questioning anyone who might have ties to the leaks. My name came up, of course. A courier showed up at my door one evening with an envelope marked inside was a single sheet of paper, a list of names, mine included, under the heading Persons of Interest. The message was clear: back off or face the consequences. Instead of retreating, I doubled down. With Drake's help, I set up a secure location, a dingy storage unit in Queens, to store the USB drive and any new evidence we gathered. Sera became my mole, feeding me updates on Garrick's movements and paranoia levels. He was unraveling, lashing out at anyone he deemed disloyal. Employees quit en masse, fearing collateral damage. I felt guilty watching the chaos unfold. These were people I'd worked alongside for years, some of whom didn't deserve this fallout. But guilt couldn't stop me now, not when I was so close to exposing the truth. The breaking point came when Drake uncovered a lead. Garrick was planning to flee the country. Apparently, he'd stashed millions in offshore accounts, ready to disappear the moment authorities closed in. If he escaped, everything I had fought for would be for nothing. "We need proof of those accounts," Drake urged. "Something concrete to hand over the feds." And so, I made the riskiest move yet. I snuck back into Hawthorne Industries after hours. Armed with a flashlight and nerves of steel, I crept through the darkened halls toward Garrick's office. The place felt eerily silent, like a tomb waiting to swallow me whole. When I reached his desk, I found what I needed, a ledger detailing every illicit transaction. But just as I was about to leave, the lights flickered on. Standing in the doorway, flanked by two burly guards, was none other than Garrick himself. Well, he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "Looks like we caught our little rat." For a moment, I froze, my heart pounding like a drum. Then instinct kicked in, grabbing the nearest heavy object, a marble paperweight. I hurled it at the nearest guard, catching him square in the jaw. Chaos erupted, while the second guard lunged at me. I ducked, scrambling toward the window. Behind me, Garrick shouted orders, his voice shrill with panic. I smashed the window with a chair and leaped onto the fire escape outside. Glass shards rained down as I bolted down the metal stairs, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. Below, a black SUV screeched to a halt, its headlights blinding me. For a split second, I thought it was over, but then the driver's side door swung open, revealing Sera behind the wheel. "Get in," she yelled. Without hesitation, I dove into the passenger seat. Tires squealed as she sped off, leaving Garrick and his goons in the dust. Neither of us spoke as we raced through the deserted streets, adrenaline coursing through our veins. "You saved me," I finally managed, staring at her profile. She glanced at me briefly, her expression unreadable. "Don't get used to it." Our alliance took a darker turn the next day. Sera revealed that Garrick had been blackmailing her too, with secrets about her past that could ruin her career and reputation. "He thinks I'm loyal because he holds all the cards," she confessed bitterly. "But I'm done playing his game." Her words gave me pause. How many others had Garrick manipulated this way? How many lives had he destroyed to maintain his power? The realization hardened my resolve. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about dismantling the entire system that allowed monsters like him to thrive. But Sera's confession also raised red flags. If she was willing to betray Garrick, what stopped her from doing the same to me? Every conversation between us felt like walking on eggshells, each word loaded with hidden meanings. Still, we pressed on. Together, we prepared to deliver the final blow. It all came to a head in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Drake arranged a meeting, ensuring federal agents would arrive shortly after. Garrick showed up alone, or so he claimed. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. "I'll give you whatever you want," he pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead. "Money, shares, anything. Just call off the dogs." I held up the ledger and smirked. "Too late for deals, Garrick. Your house of cards is collapsing." Before he could respond, Sera stepped forward, holding a flash drive of her own. "And here's the cherry on top," she said coldly. "Every dirty secret you ever tried to bury." Garrick's face turned pale. You traitorous bitch." The sound of sirens echoed in the distance. As agents stormed the building, I watched Garrick crumble, his empire reduced to ashes. Justice had been served, or so I thought. Garrick's arrest made headlines worldwide. Reporters camped outside my apartment, desperate for a statement from the whistleblower who brought down Hawthorne Industries. But I stayed quiet, letting the evidence speak for itself. The company imploded in his absence. Stock prices plummeted, lawsuits piled up, and thousands of employees lost their jobs overnight. At first, I felt vindicated. Garrick was behind bars, exposed as the fraud he truly was. Justice had been served, hadn't it? But as days turned into weeks, the reality of what I'd done began to sink in. Friends I'd worked with for decades were now unemployed, struggling to make ends meet. Families were torn apart by financial ruin. And me? I sat in my cramped apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the price of revenge had been too high. Drake stopped by one evening, uninvited but unsurprised by my gloom. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. "Garrick deserved everything he got." Did I, though? I countered. Or did I just trade one kind of corruption for another? He didn't have an answer. Neither did I. Sera reached out unexpectedly, suggesting we meet at a diner far from prying eyes. She looked tired, her usual confidence replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "I've been thinking about those employees," she admitted. "The ones who lost everything because of us." "So have I replied. "What's your point?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "We owe them something. A chance to rebuild, maybe even salvage part of the company under new leadership." It was a bold idea, one that could either redeem us or drag us deeper into chaos. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. With Garrick gone, there was an opportunity to reshape Hawthorne Industries into something better, something ethical. Sera and I drafted a proposal outlining how we could restructure the company while protecting its remaining assets. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. To our surprise, some former executives agreed to help. They saw the value in starting fresh, especially if it meant avoiding further scandal. Slowly but surely, plans came together to relaunch the business under a new name, with stricter oversight and transparency measures in place. While I focus on rebuilding the company, Claire confronted me about my behavior. "You've changed, Ted," she said one evening over dinner. "You're distant, secretive. What are you hiding?" For weeks, I kept her in the dark, afraid of dragging her into this mess. But looking at her now, I realized I couldn't keep lying, not to her, not to myself. So I told her everything. About the files, the leaks, the late-night meetings with Sera and Drake. About the guilt gnawing at me every time I thought of the people whose lives I disrupted. She listened silently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "I don't know whether to be proud of you or furious," she admitted. "But I do know one thing. You can't keep carrying this burden alone." Her words broke something inside me. For the first time in months, I let myself cry, not out of anger or frustration, but relief. Relief that someone still believed in me, despite everything. As the dust settled, federal investigators uncovered additional layers of corruption tied to Garrick's network. Names surfaced: politicians, bankers, corporate giants, all complicit in his schemes. Each revelation sent shockwaves through the industry, forcing widespread reforms. But then came the twist none of us saw coming. During a routine audit of Garrick's offshore accounts, investigators discovered large sums of money funneled into anonymous investments. Guess whose name appeared on the beneficiary list? Mine. I stared at the documents in disbelief. Years ago, Garrick had secretly transferred shares of the company into my name, likely as a way to launder funds without raising suspicion. He'd never mentioned it, probably assuming I'd stay loyal forever. Instead, I'd unwittingly become a key player in his downfall, not just morally, but legally. When I told Drake, he whistled low. "Looks like karma has a wicked sense of humor," he remarked dryly. With Garrick's empire dismantled and the company restructured, I decided it was time to step away. For good. My newfound wealth ensured financial security for Claire and me, allowing us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. But more importantly, it gave me the freedom to focus on giving back. Using proceeds from the liquidated assets, I established a foundation to support displaced workers and fund scholarships for aspiring entrepreneurs. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a step in the right direction. Sera, meanwhile, took over as interim CEO of the revamped company. She'd proven herself capable of change, working tirelessly to restore trust and integrity to the organization. We weren't friends exactly, but there was mutual respect, a shared understanding of what it meant to rise from the ashes. Months later, I found myself standing on a rooftop overlooking Manhattan, the city lights twinkling like stars. Claire stood beside me, her hand resting gently on mine. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked softly. "Yes and no," I replied honestly. I regret the pain I caused, the lives I disrupted, but I don't regret fighting for justice, even if it cost me pieces of myself along the way. She nodded, squeezing my hand. "You're a good man, Ted. Don't ever forget that." Good? Maybe. Perfect? Never. But perhaps perfection wasn't the goal. Perhaps the real victory lay in learning to navigate the gray areas, to embrace complexity, ambiguity, and the messy humanity that defined us all. Just when I thought the storm had passed, one last secret emerged. While organizing old files, I stumbled upon a letter addressed to me, written by Garrick before his arrest. In it, he confessed not only to framing me, but also to orchestrating the entire scandal as a distraction. His goal? To shift blame onto others while quietly funneling billions into hidden accounts abroad. The irony hit hard. All this time, I believed I was a mastermind, exposing truths and toppling giants. But in reality, I'd been nothing more than a pawn in Garrick's grand scheme. Yet here's the kicker. It didn't matter. Whether by design or dumb luck, justice had prevailed. The corrupt system had collapsed, and something better rose in its place. Sometimes, the ends really do justify the means, even if the path is fraught with moral compromises. On my final day in the city, I visited the old Hawthorne Industries building one last time. The once gleaming skyscraper now bore a new sign, Phoenix Global Group. Employees streamed in and out, their faces hopeful, determined. As I walked away, I realized I wasn't bitter anymore. Life wasn't fair, it rarely was. but offered second chances to those willing to fight for them. And I had fought hard. Claire waited for me at the curb, smiling warmly. Together, we climbed into the car and drove off, leaving behind the ghosts of the past. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. I was ready.